Welcome. In this video I'm going to be taking a look at this HOMELYLIFE 200W car power inverter. So this was provided to me by the distributor, but they're not compensating me for this video and they're not reviewing it before I post it. If you find this video helpful and you want to purchase one of these, I'll put a link to it in the description on Amazon, and if you use that link it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost you anything extra. So let's get this open. Okay, so here's the inverter and we have a user manual. The cord length on this from the ends of the strain reliefs is 24 inches, or 2 feet. So let's check this out. It says the input voltage is 12 volts. The rated input power is 200 watts. The output voltage and frequency is 100 volts, 110, 220, 230, plus or minus 4%, 50 hertz or 60 hertz. So I'm guessing that's based on where you buy it. This one says it outputs 110 volts. This also has USB ports. It has 2 Type A ports, a Type C port. The Type A ports have a total of 2.4 amps, or it can split it between the two, so you can have 1.2 at each. And then you have USB Type C. That supports 18 watts or 20 watts with power delivery. The fan working temperature is 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. It has a voltage display, has a power switch. It says on off, only control AC power jack. So I'm guessing this will only control the AC and the USBs will still work if it's off. And that would be because the inverter in this takes more power. So you may want to just use the USB ports without drawing a lot of power. It says protection function, over voltage protection, over current protection, overload protection, short circuit protection, low voltage protection, temperature protection. So it has lots of protection built in. It says the inverter can be used in terms of car lighting, car TV, car electric fan, car navigator, recorder, laptop, mobile phone, iPad, cash register, point of sale, etc. is necessary for car touring, mobile working, power failure because it can meet your power demand. It says rated power is 200 watts. It means the long-term stable power. Peak output power is 400 watts. That can be offered in very short time, within 0.1 second. So there could be things you use with this that will peak above the 200 watts for a split second, and this can handle up to 400 watts on that peak. But generally speaking, it would be 200 watt max. So here's some safety precautions. First one, you want to check out your power ratings of your appliances you're plugging in. Second one says to check between AC and the USB sockets, so the USB sockets will take some power too. This third one here says it may not reach the maximum power due to the car's capacity to supply it, and I'll go over that in a little bit more here. It says do not start the car's engine when the power of the appliance is on use state, so you want to start the car and then plug it in. And this one says do not start the car when it's plugged in. So similar to this one, unplug it, start the car, and then plug it in. This says do not use the inverter when you're ready to shut off the engine, so unplug it before you shut it off, and use only sine wave appliances. So what they're saying here is this could be damaged by the electrical spike that could come through when you start and stop the engine. This talks about the circuit protection here. Here's some troubleshooting. This says the following electrical appliances are not allowed to be used together with the inverter. It says appliances that use a timer, measuring instrument that requires precise power frequency, electrical appliances using phase control such as blanket, carpet, light modulator, special mobile phone chargers, etc., inverter or burst mode fluorescent lamp. So you can read through the rest of these. If you have any questions, you can usually go on the internet and do some searching to see if what you're using is going to be compatible with an inverter like this. So this is a 200 watt inverter, but it has to have 20 watts from your car to reach that. So the Amazon description page describes this. You want to go in and look at your fuse for your 12 volt power outlet. And if it's a 10 amp fuse, then you can use up to 120 watts with this. If it's 20 amp fuse, the 20 amp fuse will support 240 watts, but this is a 200 watt inverter. So if it's a 20 amp fuse, you can use this to the full capabilities. Now in my car, the covers that cover the 12 volt sockets actually tell the power requirements, and that's probably pretty common. A lot of cars probably have it printed right there next to the socket, so you don't have to delve into the fuse panel. You might be able to also find it in the user manual or somewhere else. So this has 2 plugs here, power switch on the side. Turn that off. USB Type C port, USB A ports. We have venting here around it. We have a fan here. This fan is thermostat controlled, so it won't turn on automatically. It will turn on when the load reaches a point where it needs to be turned on. So I'm going to head out to my car in a little bit to show this, but I'm going to be plugging this into a power bank, which has 12 volt output on it. You'd never really do this because this has its own ports on it, but this is just simulating a car. I can do it on my bench here where I have good lighting and good sound, and I can demonstrate this. So as I plug this in here, imagine I'm plugging this into a car. And the rating on this is 12 volts at 2 amps, so we're going to tap out at 120 watts. Okay, so this is plugged in. We can see the voltage readout here is 12.9 volts. We can turn this on. It says power on. So this is currently drawing 2 watts from my power station. So if it were plugged into a car, it would be drawing 2 watts from the car. So let's go over some uses for this. You could use this to charge your phone. Now you typically wouldn't want to use something like this to charge your phone. It really wouldn't make sense because you're converting from the DC of the battery to AC back to DC. What you want to use is the built-in USB ports. So I have a USB Type C cable here. I'll plug that in there. I'll plug this into the phone, and now the phone is charging. I also have this flashlight that charges with USB Type A cable. So to plug that in, you'll plug the cord in here and switch it back and forth till it goes in, as always. Okay, so now we're charging two things here. And this is drawing 10 watts. I'm seeing that on my power station. We see the voltage is up here to 13.3. So if I turn this inverter off, we're just using the USB ports. We'll see these are still on, and we drop down to 8 watts. So the inverter itself is taking 2 watts. Let's get into these inverted ports here. So here I have a battery charger, and if I look on the bottom of this, it was a little tricky to find right away, but I found it right here. It's 120 volts at 60 watts. So that's below the 120 watts, so I can plug that in here, like so, and here we're charging this. So this is the charge mode. Now, just because this is 60 watts doesn't mean it's drawing 60 watts. When this battery is lower, I'm guessing it's drawing more wattage, and then as this gets topped off, it's probably drawing less. So this would be a typical application for this, where I don't have a car charger for my power tool batteries, and if I wanted to go somewhere and work on something, this would be a way to charge them from my vehicle. Now, maybe there's a charger you can buy that plugs into the car. I don't have that, and I don't do enough to spend the money. So something like an inverter like this would allow me to use the tools I already have without having to spend more money. And then here's another thing. This is a Nintendo DS2 XL, or 2DS XL, and this will plug in here, because this uses a traditional charger. So here now I'm charging two things. So I do still have another USB port here that I can plug something else into, but with all of this stuff plugged in, I'm drawing 55 watts from the battery. So I'm using less than half of the rating of this doing all this. So you need to look on the back of your appliances and electronics. Most things like a little charger like this are not going to get anywhere near the 120 or 200 watt limits. And there are many things that would go over, like a microwave, an iron, a lot of power tools would go over the 200 watt limit on this. But certainly you could charge a cordless tool battery on this, and then you'd have all that power from that battery when you go to use it. You could also do things like charge laptops. There's probably inflators you could plug into here. Now, since we're not up near the 200 mark, this fan is off here. So this is very quiet. I mean, I don't hear it at all. The fan's not even running. As more power is being pulled from this, that fan might kick on. Let's pull this off here. Let's pull this off. And here I have something that takes a little more wattage. This will take around 70 watts. Plug that in. There we go. So now this is heating up. Let's see if it will run both of these. I have to be real careful with this soldering iron here I'm holding, so I don't melt anything. So right now, between these two, it's drawing 78 watts. Could maybe, I don't know if upping this will. Yeah, so now we're at 83 watts. So I'm looking at a display off camera that has these. This does not tell you how many watts it's using. You'll need to go by the ratings on your appliances you're plugging in. So let's head up to the car and I'll show you using this in a car. And I don't know if I pointed this out earlier, but this does have a pass-through on here. So you could have another like car charger or some other thing plugged into this. So if you plug this in, you're not losing your main power socket. But you do want to make sure that this plugged in and whatever you have plugged in here doesn't go over the amperage of your system. Okay, so I'm in the back of my 2016 Subaru Outback, and here we have a power outlet in the back. And here this says 12 volts, 120 watt max. So this tells us this is a 10 amp circuit. So here's the plug from the front outlet in the main console. It also says 120 watts. So I can flip this up. I'll plug the inverter here. And now we're charging the battery. So in order for this to have power, I do have to have the car on. So I do have it on in accessory mode. Typically, you would want to start the car and run it so you don't run your battery down. Of course, that kind of depends on what you're doing. If you have a healthy battery and you're just inflating an air mattress or something and you're running it for a minute, you'd probably likely be fine. But you'll have to use your own judgment there. But if you want to be safe, you'd start the car before plugging this in, and then it'd give maximum power here. So one other thing to mention is you could use one of these clamp to 12 volt socket adapters. So that would plug in here, and you can clamp this onto a battery. Now, if you do use this option, you want to make sure your clamps have really good contact with the battery. So typically what I'll do is I'll stick these on the battery terminals, and I'll kind of rotate them back and forth a little bit to make sure these grips dig into the battery terminals so you have good contact. But if we look here, there's a fuse on here, and it says 20 amps. So this will support the whole 200 watts. So if you wanted to build a whole system, you could get a deep cycle battery and connect this up to it, connect your inverter, and then use this to power things during something like a power outage. So that's the HOMELYLIFE 200 watt car power inverter. This is a very versatile tool to have in your car. You can use this for emergency situations, camping, or this could just power your kids' electronics on a road trip. The main thing when you're using one of these is to know the limitations of it, learn how to read those power ratings on your devices, and then you'll know what you can and can't plug into this. And then also make sure you use these ports over these if you can. So if you're just charging phones and such, use these ports. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.